Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and today we are continuing with Acing Articulations. In this video, I'm going to look at stacked articulations. I'm going to show you how to move and adjust your articulations, and I'm going to show you how to flip your articulations. But let's start with stacked articulations. Now, one thing I didn't talk about in the first video is that you can actually have more than one articulation on any given note or rest. And it's simply a matter of adding more. So in this case here, I'm going to add a staccato to this B, and then I can add a tenuto. And then I can add an accent, and then I can add a fermata, and I can actually keep adding as many articulations as I want to, and they will just keep getting piled on top of each other. All right, there is no limit to how many you can have. And interestingly, these articulations will stack automatically. And believe it or not, in version 26.1, this is the first time that this feature exists in Finale. Before 26.1, if you added a staccato and a tenuto on the same note, they would overlap, and you would have to manually move the tenuto out of the way. This is a feature that Finale users have been waiting many years for, maybe as much as 10 or 15 years. This feature is overdue. So better late than never. So thank you, Finale, for that. But there is a few things to know about the way that Finale automatically stacks its articulations. And when this feature came out, I was reading sort of about how it was implemented, and I kind of sort of had to laugh because the way they did it was very Finale-esque. It's very computer programmy in a way, and basically what Finale is doing is it's stacking the articulations based on the order that they exist in your articulation selection dialog box. Okay. So, and they even added this wording to the top of this box here that says the order of stacking articulations, parentheses, asterisk, is based on position in this list. Now, the asterisk, by the way, is on every articulation that's set to stack, there will be an asterisk in the bottom right corner, just so you can see which articulations are available for stacking. There are some that don't have that asterisk and don't necessarily need to be stacked, like the tremolos, for example, or the caesura or the breath mark. Those type of articulations don't necessarily need the stacking function, so they don't have it engaged. But like I said, the order in which they appear will determine how they are stacked. And the closer that the articulation is to the top of the list, the closer it will be to the note. So that's why the staccato, being the first articulation in the list, will be the one that's closest to the B here, and then the tenuto would be next, and then the accent, and then finally the fermata, which is all the way down here, will be on top, right? And the interesting thing is that we can actually customize the way in which Finale stacks the articulations by moving around the articulations within this list. And there's two options here: move down and move up. These buttons down here will do just that. Move up will move it up in the position. So in the list's position. So if I select the tenuto here and press move up a couple times, it'll take it from position 3 to position 1. So now when I get out of this window, the tenuto will be the closest articulation to this note, and it will happen retroactively. So even if I just press done, you'll see that the tenuto now is the first articulation closest to the note, right? And then we can go back here and move that down to its third position again, and you'll see that it flips it retroactively. And again, the position is based on how close it is to the note. So if we do this on a note where the articulation should be below, so if we do it here, you'll see that the articulations stack away from the note. So in this case, down, and in the top staff, they stack upwards, if that makes sense. And it also doesn't matter what order you place the articulations in. So if I were to just do this backwards, I could add the fermata first, then I could add the accent, and then I can add the tenuto, and you'll just see that it's going to put it in the right order no matter which order I enter them in. Okay. Again, it's not based on anything other than the order in which they appear in that dialog box. So that's just sort of how that works. There is a way to override the stacking feature if for whatever reason you need to do that. So if I were to put a staccato and a tenuto here, by selecting the staccato, there's a couple ways to do this. In the articulation menu, there's a new option here for stack. Use definition just means that it's going to use the stacked feature that can be turned on in the articulation designer. And never will turn that off. So if I select never, you'll see that now the tenuto is overlapping the staccato because the staccato is no longer set to stack, right? We can do the same thing with the articulation tool in the contextual menu, right-clicking. That same option exists, so you can select never, okay? I don't necessarily, I haven't figured out a useful function for never stacking, but maybe somebody will figure something out and let me know a good reason to manually uncheck that. All right. So let's talk about moving articulations. Now, just like anything else in Finale, articulations can be moved. You just grab the handle and move it around. Fairly simple. And also, like most other things in Finale, if you press Shift before you move something, it will constrain the dragging in one direction or another. So Shift, and I start moving upwards, and it will only move in the vertical position. I can move left and right as much as I want. It will not move left and right. Same thing if I press Shift and then move right or left first. Oops. It will only move horizontal and will not allow me to move up and down. So that's constraining the dragging to one axis or the other with the Shift key. And then also you can just use the arrow keys to to make some finite adjustments to your articulations. All right. So that's how you would move articulations around if you need to. There are some special cases, like with the roll, for example, which I have over here. The roll will actually have two handles. There's one here, about 2/3 of the way up, and that will just allow you to move it wherever you need it to go. And there's a second handle on the bottom, which will actually allow you to extend it or shorten it if you need to, all right? And interestingly, if you have a roll on a piano part like this, let's put one in over here. You can actually use that bottom handle to extend it all the way down to the bottom staff if you need to. That's how you would do a two-handed roll in a piano. You just have to be careful about this because if you start actually moving the distances, you'll notice that the roll itself won't move because the distance of the roll, the whole articulation is actually just attached to this right-hand chord. So moving the distance between the staffs is not going to adjust that. So it's just something to be careful about when you're dealing with a roll on a two-handed piano part like that. All right. If for whatever reason, let's say you've got some articulations that got moved around, and you want them to go back to normal. There's a couple ways to do this. First of all, any individual articulation is just simply a matter of right-clicking, and there's an option here, reset to default positioning, or that also exists in the articulation menu, reset to default positioning, right? Or you can even do that just from the selection tool, right-clicking, reset to default positioning, right? So there's three ways to accomplish that individually. If you have a bunch of articulations that have got moved and you want them to go back to their default positions, like in this case, instead of having to do 4 individual ones, just select the whole measure. And this is a neat trick. Go to Utilities, go to Change, go to Articulations, and you'll get this Change Articulation Assignment dialog box. Now, you'll have the option to apply to all articulations or selected articulations, and you can just select specific articulations to reset. But in this case, let's reset all of them. And there's a few options here. You can actually change one articulation to another articulation in this manner, or you could, the way to reset would be to add to default position, and then what you're adding is these values right here. So if you have 0, you're adding 0 to the default position, right? You could also add to the current position certain movements. So if you put in numbers here, it would move from where they currently are. But the way to do a mass reset here is just to add to default position and add 0. And they even give you this option for making stacking dynamic for stacked articulations. So this, it's worded confusingly, but basically what that's doing is it's resetting the stacked state of any articulation had you individually overridden that stacked state, if that makes sense. So check that, add to default 0, 0, click OK, and everything will go back to normal. All right, so that's how you would deal with that. And then finally, flipping articulations. There are some occasions where you might want to move one articulation from its position to a different position. So like if you wanted this accent, for example, to be below the staff, there's a couple options. Now this is a little tricky to understand, so let me see if I can explain this in a good way. Articulations will have three states of flippability, I suppose is a way to put it. Automatic, uh, frozen above, and frozen below, right? Now, when it's automatic, what that means is that the position above or below will change depending on which way the stem is going. So in this case, in this first bar here, the accents are below because the stems are going up. But if I were to transpose this up an octave, you'll see that the accents flip to above because the stems are now down, right? So these articulations, when they're put in fresh, their state is automatic, right? So if we were to select those articulations, there's a couple keystrokes here that you need to know. F for flip, A for above, B for below, and U will reset back to automatic, right? When you press F, what you're doing is changing the articulation to be the opposite. So now this articulation is frozen above, all right? You would get the same result if you press the A key and you get that accent frozen above. Interestingly, if you start here, actually, if you press U, now it's back to automatic. If you start here and press F for flip, you've frozen that accent above, and if you press flip again, you've frozen that accent below, right? Now this is has an interesting implication because it looks like it's back to its normal position, except it's not. So now, with this accent frozen below, if I were to transpose this up an octave, you'll see that that accent remains frozen below. Right? So that's the difference between automatic and double flipping. So again, if we just press U to return it to automatic, now it will go to its appropriate position based on the stem. And again, if we transpose it, it'll flip, right? So think about any articulations having three states: above, frozen below, and automatic. And that will hopefully that will make sense. And there is a way to do this without those keystrokes F, A, B, and U. If you just select, you can right click to get the contextual menu, and there's an option here, direction, and it will tell you that now it's checked to automatic. And again, you can select above, and now you can see that it's, the direction is above, right? And also that menu exists in the articulation menu, direction. You can see that it's above. We can reset it back to automatic. And I think you can get there also from the selection tool, right? Yep. Direction, you'll see the directions here, right? And again, I just chosen below, and it's frozen below, right? So again, if we transpose, we get that issue right there, right? So just be aware that there's three states: frozen above, frozen below, and automatic. And automatic is generally what you want to have. This is just to say that if you do start flipping articulations in this manner, if you flip it and you decide that that's not right, don't use the F key again to freeze it below. Just use the automatic, the U, to get it back to automatic, right? So if you can get in the habit of that, that would save you some trouble down the road. Now, there's some practical reasons for flipping articulations, particularly when you're dealing with layers. In fact, if I had more layers in here with other articulations, it might get a little messy. So there are occasions where, you might need to go to layer 2 here and select these staccatos here, and get them to the above position, which looks a little awkward, but if there's other stuff going on, it might be necessary. All right. So that's flipping articulations. And the final thing I would say about this is just be careful. Obviously you can drag an articulation to wherever you need it to, but don't ever use the dragging to flip an articulation to the other side. So it's not great to just grab that articulation and, move it over there. Because when you start moving the notes around, some weird things may start happening. It's not a great way to do it. And you'll notice that, it looks like this accent is now frozen above, but if you check out the state in the menu, you'll see that it's still set to automatic. So really what you're doing is you're just dragging it away from its automatic position, right? And of course, to get it back, just reset to default positioning and you're good to go. All right. So I wouldn't recommend dragging an articulation to flip it to the other side. All right. So use F, A, B, or U. And that's that. So yeah, I talked about stacked and moving articulations and flipping articulations, so I covered a lot. Hopefully all of this makes sense. Come back for another video. In the next video, I'm going to start talking about the articulation designer, so we can actually create our own articulations and edit the articulations that exist and whatnot. So thanks for watching, and come back soon for some more Acing articulation videos. Thanks.